According to the CDC, Minnesota is on the low end for overdose deaths, but for the families of the 581 people who lost their lives to addiction in 2015 and the hundreds since, it's a small consolation. Here in Duluth, it's not hard to see addiction's toll, but these streets are also filled with people who refuse to add to those statistics.
In a city blessed by geography, it's not always the stunning views that catch your eyes.
Let me pick that one up.
Living in Duluth's Central Hillside, Sean Carr says discoveries like this come at least once a week.
I had 5 people that I knew had passed away in 1 week from a heroin overdose. I couldn't understand why is this not front page news? Because, 5 people got sick at Chi-Chi's and the world stopped.
But Carr says he's far from the only neighbor hoping city streets get a little cleaner. Derek Lockweir has called Duluth home since his mother brought him here as a child.
The reason why she moved us up here is just because she wanted to get us away from that scene down in Minneapolis. She didn't want us to follow in my dad's footsteps, which wasn't, I guess, too successful.
Lockweir says that path started shortly after grade school.
Then it progressed from marijuana to using pharmacy medications.
Escalating, he says, until he followed his brother to the Arrowhead Juvenile Center.
After a couple days of being there, I decided I didn't want to be there no more. So I purposely broke my hand, and the staff there brought me to the hospital, St. Luke's Hospital, and I escaped from St. Luke's Hospital with shackles on my feet.
From there, he ran to Minneapolis. He was 17.
I was in a state of mind where I didn't care.
Months later, Lockweir says he came back to Duluth, faced a short sentence, and then he was on his own.
Started seeing people making money. And I always wondered, how are these guys driving around in these nice cars and stuff like that? So I started asking questions. And they said, well, they're selling drugs.
Joining the ranks, Lockweir says he started seeing the worst of Duluth.
A lot of what you call trap houses. Families that are addicted to drugs and their kids are being affected by it because they're spending their money on drugs.
They're desperate. They probably spend a majority of their money trying to support their habit, and anything that they can do, whether it's stealing or renting out their, essentially subletting their property out for people to sell there or to use there for drugs, that's what they're going to do.
Commander of the Lake Superior Drugs and Violent Crimes Task Force, Lieutenant Jeff Kasel says when that addiction mixes with fear, the worst of it stays behind closed doors.
These people are worried that they're going to end up getting arrested or going to prison for it, so they're looking for places that are out of the sight of the public.
And when it is rental properties, do the landlords usually know what's going on?
Some do and some don't, and that's part of our job as a police department, is to make sure that our landlords are informed.
That evidence often comes through police calls and vigilant neighbors, but Carr says living with a dealer on his floor taught him it's hard to prove an unspoken truth.
Because you just can't say, well, this guy's selling drugs. You have to have some proof behind that. And then I heard my neighbor, running down the hallway, call 911, call 911. And apparently he had to stab the other man in the head to get away. And the police got there. The guy got stabbed, had a warrant, so he took off and never showed up at the hospital.
Lockweir says it's all part of the drug game, and he realized he didn't want to keep playing.
Well, my wake-up call was in 2013. My brother died from an overdose.
Mark Lockweir was 28.
I had a tough time dealing with it. I got in a lot of scuffles with the police, got in fights.
A month later, Lockweir was in prison.
They sent me down to St. Cloud, and I started exercising a lot, running and start praying. And once my body started getting clean of any chemicals or anything, I started dreaming more.
That's when he says he felt his brother's spirit.
He was sitting on a chair just like we're sitting. He said everything will be fine. Once that happened, I just, it felt like, I was reborn or something. Like something in my head, in my mind switched. And that's when I just decided to, switch my life around.
Once again, following in his father's footsteps.
Just watching him doing what he was doing, kind of opened up a door.
After 22 years in prison, James Cross went on a similar journey in the Twin Cities, giving up drugs and crime to start Natives Against Heroin. Lockweir says seeing his father give back to a community he once hurt showed him the kind of change he was willing to make.
I said, well, how do you feel about me opening a chapter up in Duluth? And he said, that's fine.
Natives Against Heroin made their Duluth debut last month, fighting addiction in Duluth and on the Fond du Lac Reservation.
Heroin declared war against our people.
Weeks ago, the group stationed themselves outside homes where they say people were selling and using drugs, outing their well-known secret and offering help.
Because I don't want nobody to go through what I went through, because people are just basically seeing it and just sweeping it under the rug because they don't care. But I care.
Besides the groups highlighted in our story, there are countless others working to fight addiction, all in the hopes that 581 might soon be 0.